Well, Shabbat Shalom and happy Passover. My name is Zach Helmberger, and I was reading in Leviticus 23 concerning the Passover and Feast of Unleavened Bread. To the best of my understanding, based on the first sliver of the new moon and the barley being in the Aviv stage, which is suggested by, Exodus 12, I think. So let's look at Exodus 12. Whoops. So Heavenly Father, we just thank you and we praise you for bringing us safely to another Shabbat, and thank you for bringing us safely to another Pesach. And just please open our eyes more and more, help us to love you with all our heart, with all our soul, and all our strength, and to love one another even as Yeshua has loved us and laid down his life for us on the cross, Father. And thank you and we praise you for this great salvation, this great reconciliation that Jesus has made possible for the lost sheep of the house of Israel, the divorced lost sheep of the house of Israel. Thank you, we praise you. In Yeshua's name, open our eyes, Father, to your word. Exodus 12, starting with verse 1. Now, Yod He Vav He, it's not the Lord. The Lord is a title, so I say Yod He Vav He. Yod He Vav He said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, "This month for you, it shall be the first month of your year. Tell the whole congregation of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, each man must select a lamb for his family, one per household. If the household is too small for a whole lamb, they are to share with the nearest neighbor based on the number of people and apportion the lamb accordingly. Your lamb must be an unblemished year-old male. You may take it from the sheep or the goats. You must keep it until the 14th day of the month." So you select it on the 10th day, and then you keep it until the 14th day of the month. When the whole congregation of Israel will slaughter the animals at twilight, they are to take some of the blood and put it on the sides and tops of the door frames of the houses where they eat the lambs. Verse 8. They are to eat the meat at night, roasted over the fire, along with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Do not eat any of the meat raw or cooked in boiling water, but only roasted over the fire, its head and legs and inner parts. Do not leave any of it. Yeah, so I mean, imagine roasting a whole lamb over the fire, with the head and the legs and the inner parts. And it says, verse 10 says, "Do not leave any of it until morning. Before the morning, you must burn up any part that is left over. This is how you are to eat it. You must be fully dressed for travel, with your sandals on your feet and your staff in your hand. You are to eat it in haste. It's Passover. On that night, I will pass through the land of Egypt and strike down every firstborn male, both man and beast, and I will execute judgment against all the gods of Egypt. I am Yod He Vav He. The blood on the houses where you are staying will be a sign. When I see the blood, I will pass over you. no plague will fall on you to destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt. And this day will be a memorial for you, and you are to celebrate it as a feast to Yehovah, a permanent statute for the generations to come. For 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. On the first day you are to remove the leaven from your houses. So today, like for example, today, which at least to the best of my reckoning is the day one of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, I went to the house and looked for anything that might have had leaven in it. On the first day you are to remove the leaven from your houses. Whoever eats anything leavened from the first day through the seventh day must be cut off from Israel. On the first day you are to hold a sacred assembly, and another on the seventh day. You must not do any work on those days except to prepare meals. That is all you may do. So you are to keep the feast of unleavened bread. For on this very day I brought your divisions out of the land of Egypt. You must keep this day as a permanent statute for the generations to come. Okay, and so it's like, okay, for the generations to come. So that's, kind of like forever. Okay. On the first day, you're to hold a sacred assembly, and another on the seventh day. You must not do any work on those days except to prepare meals. That is all you may do. So you are to keep the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Oh, yes, I already read that. Okay. I need a bookmark or something. Where did I leave off here? Seven days. Huh. That is so weird. You must not do any work. Yeah, okay. So you are to keep the Feast of Unleavened Bread, for this very day I brought your divisions out of the land of Egypt. Okay, yeah. You must keep this day as a permanent statute for the generations to come. In the first month you are to eat unleavened bread. From the evening of the 14th day until the evening of the 21st day. Even the 14th day. Okay. For 7 days there must be no leaven found in your houses. If anyone eats something leavened, that person, whether a foreigner or a native of the land, must be cut off from the congregation of Israel. It's kind of like the ecclesia, the church. You are not to eat anything leavened. Eat unleavened bread in all your homes. Then Moses summoned all the elders of Israel, and he told them, go at once and select for yourself a lamb for each family, and slaughter the Passover lamb. Take a cluster of hyssop, dip it in the blood in the basin, and brush the blood on the top and sides of the doorframe. None of you shall go out the door of his house until morning. When Yehovah passes through to strike down the Egyptians, he will see the blood on the top and sides of the doorframe and will pass over that doorway. So he will not allow the destroyer to enter. So he will not allow the destroyer to enter your houses and strike you down. And you are to keep this command as a permanent statute for you and your descendants. When you enter the land that Yeshua is giving you as he promised, you are to keep this service. When your children ask you, what does this service mean to you? You are to reply, it is the Passover sacrifice to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, who passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt when he struck down the Egyptians and spared our homes. Then the people bowed down and worshipped, and the Israelites went and did just what Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh had commanded Moses and Aaron. Now at midnight, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh struck down every firstborn male in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sat on his throne, to the firstborn of the prisoner in the dungeon, as well as all the firstborn among the livestock. During the night, Pharaoh got up, he and all his officials and all the Egyptians, and there was loud wailing in Egypt, for there was no house without someone dead. Then Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron by night and said, get up, leave my people, both you and the Israelites. Go worship as Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, as you have requested. Take your flocks and herds as well, just as you have said, and depart, and bless me also. And in order to send them out of the land quickly, the Egyptians urged the people on, for otherwise they said, we are all going to die. So the people took their dough before it was leavened, carrying it on their shoulders in kneading bowls wrapped in clothing. Furthermore, the Israelites acted on Moses' word and asked the Egyptians for articles of silver and gold and for clothing. And Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh gave the people such favor in the sight of the Egyptians that they granted their request. In this way, they plundered the Egyptians. The Israelites journeyed from Ramses to Sukkot with about 600,000 men on foot, besides women and children, and a mixed multitude also went up with them, along with great droves of livestock, both flocks and herds. So you got 600,000 men, presumably, men of fighting age, and so you have 600,000 women, presumably, assuming that everyone had wives. So that makes that 1.2 million, and then they, most had, at least a couple of children. So now you're looking at, 2.4 million or something like that, and then you have a mixed multitude that also went up with them. So this is a large number of people, possibly 3 million. So this is a very large number. So that's something to keep in mind, especially when you get to the Mount Sinai event, which is the most significant event in all known human history, whether, at least whatever we know that it's written or oral or nonverbal or archaeological information. So it's the only mass revelation of a supernatural being that was witnessed by about 3 million people simultaneously and audibly. So Exodus 12 verses 37 and 38 is a very significant pair of verses. Now going to verse 39. Since the dough had no leaven, the people baked what they had brought out of Egypt into unleavened loaves. For when they had been driven out of Egypt, they could not delay and had not prepared any provisions for themselves. Now, the duration of the Israelites' stay in Egypt was 430 years. At the end of 430 years, to the very day, all Yehovah's divisions went out of the land of Egypt, because Yehovah kept a vigil that night to bring them out of the land of Egypt. This same night is to be a vigil to Yehovah, to be observed by all the Israelites for the generation to come. And I did not do too well on that category, so I got quite sleepy. Okay. Exodus 12, verse 43. And Yehovah said to Moses and Aaron, "This is the statute of the Passover. No foreigner is to eat of it, but any slave who has been purchased may eat of it after you have circumcised him. A temporary resident or hired hand shall not eat the Passover." And this is an important point. You may have heard the phrase, that we were bought by the blood of Christ. We were purchased by the blood of Christ to be slaves of righteousness. So we are, we who, Yeshua has opened our eyes and opened our hearts to receive the Word of God, Genesis to Revelation, and we've received it, like the Greek word lambano. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but literally to eat. It's like Jesus says in John 6. It says, unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no life in you. And just kind of going off on a rabbit trail, but the point is that we were bought by Christ through his shed blood. And so we may eat of it. It says, but any slave who has been purchased may eat of it. And we've been purchased by Christ, the Son of God, who was sent by the Most High, Yod He Vav He. Okay, so continuing on with verse 46, it must be eaten inside one house. Talking about the Passover meal. You are not to take any of the meat outside of the house, and you may not break any of the bones. The whole congregation of Israel must celebrate it. If a foreigner resides with you and wants to celebrate Yod He Vav He's Passover, all the males in the household must be circumcised. Then he may come near and celebrate it. And he shall be like a native of the land. So it's kind of emphasized like there's one law, one people, one Messiah, one Lord, one King. But no uncircumcised man may eat of it. This same law shall apply to both the natives and the foreigners who reside among you. So again, there's one law, and it's not like how, say, for example, Islam. There's like different classes of people. There's the believers, those who submit to Big Al in the sky. And then there's the dhimmis, or the kafirs or kufars, and I would be considered a kufar, like someone that should be enslaved or killed, because I will not deviate, to as best as I understand. My intention is not to deviate from God's laws, as exemplified by Jesus, who walked in God's laws perfectly. He's the Lamb he's the Passover lamb. He's the lamb without spot. So, okay, verse 50. Then all the Israelites did this. They did just as Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh had commanded Moses and Aaron. And on that very day, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh brought the Israelites out of the land of Egypt by their divisions. Okay, and then Exodus chapter 13. Then Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh said to Moses, consecrate to me every firstborn male, the firstborn from every womb among the Israelites belongs to me, both man and beast. So Moses told the people, remember this day, the day you came out of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. For Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh brought you out by the strength of his hand, and nothing leavened shall be eaten. Today, in the month of Aviv, you are leaving, and when Yehovah brings you into the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Hivites, and Jebusites, the land he swore to your fathers that he would give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, you shall keep this service in this month. And so I'm not in the land, but I've chosen to observe it anyway, just because the day is coming when we all will be, all the believers will be brought into the land, because Jesus is coming. He's coming again, and he's coming like the second Moses to gather all of us, even from the farthest, from the farthest island. From there, he will gather us, and from there, he will bring us back into the land, the promised land, and we will rule and reign with him for 1,000 years. And so, and for that hope, I can't keep the Passover, but I observe it. I practice it. So that's what we're to do. Which is to practice the truth, to practice righteousness, practice being Jesus. Being imitators. Because it says, imitate God in the Newer Testament. I can't remember where exactly it says that, but to imitate God, imitate Christ. Be like Christ, and so that's what I am trying to do. Okay, so this is Exodus 13, verse 6. Exodus 13, verse 6. For 7 days you are to eat unleavened bread, and on the seventh day there shall be a feast to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Unleavened bread shall be eaten during those 7 days. Nothing leavened may be found among you, nor shall leaven be found anywhere within your borders. And on that day you are to explain to your son, this is because of what Yehovah did for me when I came out of Egypt. It shall be a sign for you on your hand, a reminder on your forehead, that the Torah of Yehovah is to be on your lips. But with a mighty hand, Yehovah brought you out of Egypt. Therefore, you shall keep this statute at the appointed time, year after year. Verse 11, Exodus 12, verse 11. And after Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh brings you into the land of the Canaanites and gives it to you, as he swore to you and your fathers, you are to present to Yehovah the firstborn male of every womb. All the firstborn males of your livestock belong to Yehovah. You must redeem every firstborn donkey with a lamb. And if you do not redeem it, you are to break its neck, and every firstborn of your sons you must also redeem with a lamb. Verse 14. In the future, when your son asks you, what does this mean? You are to tell him, with a mighty hand, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh brought us out of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. And when the Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh killed every firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast. This is why I sacrifice to Yehovah the firstborn male of every womb. But I redeem all the firstborn of my sons. So it shall serve as a sign to you, on your hand and a symbol on your forehead. For with a mighty hand, Yehovah brought us out of Egypt. Okay, I think I'll stop there. And then, so I'm going to go to let's see, there's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. Okay, so we go to Leviticus 23. There's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. Okay, so we go to Leviticus 23. That's the kind of the classic go-to chapter for the feast of the Most High. Okay, now I got to remind myself not to forget to read Jeremiah 23. Oh, that's interesting. Is that Jeremiah 23? I think it is. So Jeremiah 23 is a prophecy and that has not yet been fulfilled that touches on Leviticus 23 in a powerful way. Okay, Leviticus 23, verse 1. Then Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh said to Moses, speak to the Israelites and say to them, these are my appointed feasts, the feasts of Yehovah that you are to proclaim as sacred assemblies. For 6 days work may be done, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of complete rest, a day of sacred assembly. You must not do any work, wherever you live. It is a Sabbath to Yehovah. Verse 4. These are Yehovah's appointed feasts, the sacred assemblies you are to proclaim at their appointed times. The Passover to Yehovah begins at twilight on the 14th day of the first month. On the 15th day of the same month begins the feast of unleavened bread to Yehovah. For 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. On the first day you are to hold a sacred assembly, that would be today. You are not to do any regular work. For 7 days you are to present a food offering to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. On the seventh day there shall be a sacred assembly. You must not do any regular work. And then there's the Feast of First Fruits, which is, if I'm understanding this correctly, is always on a Sunday. So today's Saturday in the Gregorian calendar, or Shabbat and Hebrew calendar. So tomorrow would be day 1, and there is a special instruction there for the Feast of First Fruits. Whoops. Okay. Leviticus 23, verse 9. And Yehovah said to Moses, speak to the Israelites and say, when you enter the land that I am giving you, and you reap its harvest, you are to bring to the priest I am giving you, and you reap its harvest, You are to bring to the priest a sheaf of the firstfruits of your harvest, and he shall wave the sheaf before Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, that it may be accepted on your behalf. The priest is to wave it on the day after the Sabbath. And I'm operating on the assumption that that is the day after the weekly Sabbath. Okay. Verse 12. On the day you wave the sheaf, you shall offer a year-old lamb without blemish as a burnt offering to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, along with its grain offering of 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour, mixed with oil, a food offering to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, a pleasing aroma, and its drink offering of 1/4 of a hin of wine. You must not eat any bread or roasted or new grain until the very day you have brought this offering to your God. This is to be a permanent statute for the generations to come, wherever you live. Okay, that's significant. It says wherever you live. Now, one kind of a technical detail here is currently does not exist a temple or a tabernacle that is ordained by God, as ordained by Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. So these sacrifices, and it literally says, you must bring your sacrifices, whether it be animal sacrifices or grain offering or drink offering, you must do it at the place that Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh has chosen for his name to dwell. And so we know, that is Jerusalem. And currently there's no, there's no temple or tabernacle present there that is ordained by God. Okay. Okay, and that's it for the next. So verse 15, it starts going into the Feast of Weeks. Well, okay, we'll go ahead and read that because it kind of flows into. So you got the Passover and Feast of Unleavened. Somewhere in the Feast of Unleavened Bread, you have the Feast of First Fruits, which is on a Sunday, as far as I can reckon, and then that will flow into the Feast of Weeks, also known as Shavuot or Pentecost. You'll see that in the Newer Testament. They'll refer to it as Pentecost. It's the same thing. Verse 15. So Leviticus 23, verse 15. From the day after the Sabbath, which would be today, in this 2026 here, the day you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, you are to count off 7 full weeks. You shall count off 50 days until the day after the 7th Sabbath, which would be Sunday, and then present, or day 1 in the Hebrew calendar, and then present an offering of new grain to Yehovah. So the new grain in this case would be wheat, because the barley ripens first in the spring, so that's the earliest winter crop. So the barley, you plant the barley in the fall, it overwinters, and then it comes up early in the spring. Then about 50 days later, apparently, you have Shavuot or Pentecost, which is one of the 3 mandatory feasts where all men are supposed to go to the place that Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh has chosen for his name. In this case, it would be Jerusalem. So all the men in the promised land are to go to Jerusalem That's the Passover or Feast of Unleavened Bread. Passover / Feast of Unleavened Bread. You have Shavuot, which is a single day event, as far as I understand. And then you have Tabernacles, also known as, I forgot the word now, Sukkot. So you have Pesach, which is Passover, Shavuot, aka Pentecost, and Tabernacles, Feast of Tabernacles, also known as Sukkot. Those are the three mandatory pilgrimage feasts where you all go into Jerusalem, and it's a mighty throng of people, lots of people there, and that so when you look at the text for Pentecost, when the Holy Spirit came on the apostles, there was lots of people that will witness it, and everybody, like 3,000 people became believers when they heard their testimony, and they're asking, "What's going on here?" All these people are speaking in my own native language. So you had people from all over the place coming to Jerusalem, not just from Israel, but from Greece and Africa, I think even so. Yeah, so Leviticus 23, verse 16. So you shall count out 50 days until the seventh Sabbath, and then present an offering of new grain to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Bring 2 loaves of bread from your dwelling as a wave offering, each made from 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour, baked with leaven as the first fruits to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. So you have the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which we're observing now, and then we're going to have 2 loaves of the leavened bread for Shavuot. And then, okay, so there we'll move on to Numbers. Oh yeah, this is an interesting point. There is what's called a second Passover. So in the next month, presumably, starting on the evening of the 14th day after the first sliver of the new moon is observed in Jerusalem, there's a second Passover that's available to people. Okay, Numbers chapter 9, verse 1. In the first month of the second year after Israel had come out of the land of Egypt, Yeshua spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai. The Israelites are to observe the Passover at its appointed time. You are to observe it at the appointed time at twilight on the 14th day of this month, in accordance with its statutes and ordinances. So Moses told the Israelites to observe the Passover, and they did so in the wilderness of Sinai. At twilight on the 14th day of the first month, the Israelites did everything just as Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh had commanded Moses. But there were some men who were unclean due to a dead body, so they could not observe the Passover on that day. And they came before Moses and Aaron that same day and said to Moses, "We are unclean because of a dead body. But why should we be excluded from presenting Yehovah's offerings with the other Israelites at the appointed time?" So Moses humbly said, "Wait here until I find out what Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh commands concerning about you," Moses replied. So he didn't know how to answer that question. So he said, "Okay, wait here," and then he's going to go and talk to the Most High. So then Yehovah said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites, when any one of your descendants is unclean because of a dead body or is away on a journey, he may still observe the Passover to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Such people are to observe it at twilight on the 14th day of the second month. They are to eat the lamb together with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. They may not leave any of it until morning, or break any of its bones. They must observe the Passover according to all its statutes. But if a man who is ceremonially clean and is not on a journey still fails to observe the Passover, he must be cut off from his people, because he did not present Yehovah's offering at its appointed time. That man will bear the consequences of his sin. If a foreigner dwelling among you wants to observe the Passover to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, he is to do so according to the Passover statute and its ordinances. You are to apply the same statute to both the foreigner and the native of the land. So there's no division. So basically all who wish to join themselves to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh can do so, and simply by learning of his ways and walking in them, and obviously with Yeshua as our example. He is the example of how to walk with God. And let's see. So as far as I know, there's only 3 people that have ascended. There was Enoch in Genesis. There was Elijah or Eliyahu in, I think that was in Judges or Kings and Chronicles, or one of those guys. And then Jesus, Yeshua, are the only people who have been observed to ascend into heaven to be with the Most High. I'm not sure how I got off on that trail, but anyway, but you are to apply the same statute to both the foreigner and the native of the land. So, and you'll see this in Isaiah. What is this? Isaiah. Maybe I should pull that up. I think that's Isaiah. Oops. Isaiah 56. Yep. Okay. Isaiah 56. This is pretty cool. This is what Yehovah says: maintain justice and do what is right, for my salvation is coming soon. So Isaiah was 600 years before the coming of Jesus. And so soon is, can have various meanings, but this is what Yehovah says: maintain justice and do what is right, for my salvation is coming soon, and my righteousness will be revealed. Blessed is the man who does this, and the Son of Man who holds it fast, who keeps the Sabbath without profaning it, and keeps his hand from doing any evil. Let no foreigner who has joined himself to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh say, the Lord will utterly exclude me from his people. I'm kind of skipping ahead here. And the foreigner who joins themselves to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh to minister to him, to love the name of Yehovah, and to be his servants, all who keep the Sabbath without profaning it, and who hold fast to my covenant, I will bring them to my holy mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and sacrifices will be accepted on my altar, for my house will be called a house of prayer for all the nations. Thus declares Yehovah God, thus declares Adonai Yehovah, thus declares the Lord God, or Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. So this is Isaiah 56, verse 8. Thus declares the Lord Yehovah, who gathers, so he He gathers the dispersed of Israel. He says, I will gather to them still others besides those already gathered. So this is hinting at a great regathering that's going to happen that has not yet been fulfilled. And Jeremiah 23 touches on that. So we'll get to that in a bit here. But I thought that was an awesome connection. So returning back to Numbers chapter 9. So if a foreigner dwelling among you wants to observe the Passover to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, he is to do so according to the Passover statute and its ordinances. You are to apply the same statute to both the foreigner and the native of the land. So there's one law for all people, is what this is touching on. Okay. And we got another reference in Numbers chapter 28. So Numbers 28, starting with verse 16. Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh's Passover. On the 15th day of this month, there shall be a feast. For 7 days, unleavened bread is eaten. Unleavened bread is eaten. I gotta work on my T's here. On the first day, there is to be a sacred assembly. You must not do any regular work. Present to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh a food offering, a burnt offering of 2 young bulls, 1 ram, and 7 male lambs a year old, all unblemished. The grain offering shall consist of fine flour mixed with oil. The grain offering shall consist of fine flour mixed with oil. Offer 3/10 of an ephah with each bull, 2/10 of an ephah with the ram, and 1/10 of an ephah with each of the 7 lambs. Include 1 male goat as a sin offering to make atonement for you. You are to present these in addition to the regular morning burnt offering. Offer the same food each day for 7 days as a food offering, a pleasing aroma to Yehovah. It is to be offered with its drink offering and the regular burnt offering. On the 7th day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, you shall hold a sacred assembly. You must not do any regular work. And then it's going to transition now into the Feast of Weeks, but it does touch on first fruits, which happens during the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Well, gosh, I'm not so sure now. It says when Feast of Weeks on the day of first fruits, because Feast of Weeks is also called first fruits. So you got Shavuot, Pentecost, first fruits. So maybe we've already changed subjects here. Okay, yeah, I think that's so. This particular Numbers chapter 28, 6. I think that's concerning the Levites. What the Levites are to do to present to Yehovah during that time. Well, no, let's see here. Numbers 28, verse 1. Then Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh said to Moses, command the Israelites and say to them, see that you present to me at its appointed time the food for my food offerings as a pleasing aroma to me. This so jumping ahead to verse 6 here. This is a regular burnt offering established at Mount Sinai as a pleasing aroma, a food offering to Yehovah. The drink offering accompanied each lamb shall be a quarter of a hin. pour out the offering of fermented drink to Yehovah in the sanctuary area and offer the second lamb at twilight with the same grain offering and drink offering as in the morning. It is a food offering, a pleasing aroma to Yehovah. On the Sabbath day, this is verse 9, it's on the Sabbath day, present 2 unblemished year-old male lambs accompanied by a grain offering of 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, as well as a drink offering. This is the burnt offering for every Sabbath in addition to the regular burnt offering, or mixed with oil, as well as a drink offering. This is the burnt offering for every Sabbath in addition to the regular burnt offering and its drink offering, which I think was mentioned above. So yeah, this definitely sounds like what the Levites will be doing, because there's always Levites at the tabernacle or the temple, and everybody else is just going to observe the Sabbath at their home, wherever that may be. Okay, so now we go to Deuteronomy 16. Okay. Deuteronomy 16, starting with verse 1. Observe the month of Aviv and celebrate the Passover to Yehovah your God, because in the month of Aviv, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, brought you out of Egypt by night. You are to offer to Yehovah your God the Passover sacrifice from the herd or flock in the place Yehovah will choose as a dwelling for his name. And there's that phrase, it's like where he chooses a dwelling for his name. You must not eat any unleavened bread. You must not eat any leavened bread with it. For 7 days you are to eat it with unleavened bread, the bread of affliction, because you left the land of Egypt in haste, so that you may remember for the rest of your life that the day you left the land of Egypt. No leaven is to be found in all your land for 7 days, and none of the meat you sacrifice in the evening of the first day shall remain until morning. So you have to eat everything and not leave any until morning. And if there is anything left over, you have to burn it up, like kind of like a burnt offering kind of thing. Verse 5. So it's Deuteronomy 16, verse 5. You are not to sacrifice the Passover animal in any of the towns Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, is giving you. So this is, he's given us the land, the promised land. You must only offer the Passover sacrifice at the place Yehovah your God will choose as a dwelling for his name. Do this in the evening as the sun sets, at the same time you departed from Egypt. And you shall roast it and eat it in the place Yehovah your God will choose. And in the morning you shall return to your tents. For 6 days, Deuteronomy 16, verse 8, for 6 days you must eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day you shall hold a solemn assembly to Yehovah your God. You must not do any work. Verse 9. You are to count off 7 weeks from the time you first put the sickle to the standing grain, and you shall celebrate the Feast of Weeks to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh your God with a freewill offering that you give in proportion to how Yehovah your God has blessed you. And you shall rejoice before Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, in the place he will choose as a dwelling for his name. You, your sons and daughters and men servants and maidservants and the Levites within your gates, as well you, your sons and daughters and men servants and maidservants and the Levites within your gates, as well as the foreigner, the fatherless, and the widows among you. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and carefully follow these statutes. Okay. And let's go to Jeremiah 23, because that is, so a lot of people think, well, the Passover or stuff like that, that's just only for the Jews, but that's not the case. And because especially when Jesus is talking about I can't remember where it is, but he says somewhere that I will. I can't remember where it is, but he says somewhere that I will gather. I will still gather others that still have not been gathered. So he's going to gather together all Israel, and there's also going to be others, just like the mixed multitude. So this is things are cyclical. So if you study Exodus, you're going to see elements or themes or patterns that will be repeated. Maybe not in the exact same way, but they will be repeated in the second greater Exodus, where Jesus, when his second coming, he's going to be like the second Moses, and he's going to gather all of us believers from the whole world and bring us back to the promised land. And there we will dwell with him and rule and reign for 1,000 years and then forevermore, which is somewhere in Revelation. Okay. So this is Jeremiah 23, starting with verse 1. Woe to the shepherds who destroy and scatter the sheep of my pasture, declares Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Therefore, this is what Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, the God of Israel, says about the shepherds who tend my people. You have scattered my flock and have driven them away, and have not attended to them. Because Jesus, like the parable we talk about the lost sheep, he's got 99 sheep, and they're following him and obeying him, and then this one wanders off. He leaves the 99 and he goes and searches for that one lost sheep, puts it on his shoulder, and comes back to the flock and says, "Rejoice with me! I found my lost sheep." Okay, so that was what, verse 2. Therefore, this is what. So I'm going to read it again. So Jeremiah chapter 23, verse 2. Therefore, this is what Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, the God of Israel, says about the shepherds who tend my people. You have scattered my flock and driven them away, and have not attended to them. Behold, I will attend to you for the evil of your deeds, declares Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Then I myself will gather the remnant of my flock from all the lands to which I have banished them. And he banished them because of their disobedience. First, you had the northern kingdom, the house of Israel, that God literally divorced in Isaiah and in Jeremiah. Jeremiah 3, verse 8 in particular. And then he sent them away, and they forgot who they were as a people. They just became as Gentiles. I mean, you look around, you can't distinguish an Israelite, someone from the northern kingdom, house of Israel. But God did not divorce the house of Judah, the southern kingdom, because the kingdom was torn in two after King Solomon died. And so, I think it's, for the sake of David that God did not divorce the southern kingdom, house of Judah. And they're identifiable as a people today, the Jews, and we call them the Jews, house of Judah, the Jews. So there's this mystery. It's like, where are these, these lost sheep of the house of Israel? And Jesus literally says in Matthew 15:24, he says, I came only for the, in his first coming, I came only for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So there's a mystery there. It's like, okay, what does that mean exactly, and how did he, it's like, what happened? Like so here's these lost sheep, they're divorced, and God's law literally says is, they cannot come back to the Father. They once God divorces you, that's it. And so thus you have this mysterious thing. It says, I came only for the lost sheep of house of Israel, which is Matthew 15:24. So that's is a mystery. It's a mystery. And Paul touches on it too. And once you understand it, your hair just stands up. You just got to get goosebumps. Okay, so reading Jeremiah 23 verse 3 again, I think you'll kind of see. So it says, I myself will gather the remnant of my flock from all the lands to which I banished them, and I will return them to their pasture, where they will be fruitful and multiply. Okay, so that's a very interesting. It says, be fruitful and where have you heard that before? It's like you got Genesis, God creates Adam and Eve, and he says, be fruitful and multiply. And so, so be fruitful. And it's like, okay, well, why did he just say, hey, guys, multiply? But he says, be fruitful and multiply. And so, and I think like John the Baptist and I think, Jesus too, in the Gospels, I know for sure John the Baptist says, he's rebuking the Pharisees or somebody. Says, produce fruit in keeping with repentance. And that's touches on this thing here. That produce fruit in keeping with repentance. The fruit of praise, the fruit of obedience, the fruit of our lips. And so there's something there to look at. It's like, what is this phrase, be fruitful and multiply? So you have be fruitful and multiply in Genesis with Adam and Eve. And then when Noah and his three sons, they got out of the ark, and the whole planet wiped out. There's no humans except for these handful of people. And again, God says, be fruitful and multiply. And again, here we have in Jeremiah 23, which is much later in the timeline. This actually has not even come to pass yet. Because verse 3, it says, then I myself, and Jesus and the Father, because what Jesus says, I and the Father are one. So this, you can kind of see Jesus speaking here, even though it's the Most High. Then I myself will gather the remnant of my flock from all the lands to which I have banished them. It's because of their disobedience and sin. And I will return them to their pasture, where they will be fruitful and multiply. I will raise up shepherds over them who will tend them, and they will no longer be afraid or dismayed, nor will any go missing, declares Yeshua. And then there's verse 5 here, verse 5 through 6. It sounds like it might be kind of a poem or something. The structure on is different from the rest of the chapter, almost like it's a prose or a poem. Behold, The days are coming, declares Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, when I will raise up for David a righteous branch. And we all know who that is. He will reign wisely as king and will administer justice and righteousness in the land. In his days, Judah, southern kingdom, in his days, Judah will be saved, and Israel, northern kingdom, will dwell securely and no longer be, conquered and driven out. And this is his name by which he will be called, Yehovah, our righteousness. And so this is, I believe, this is, so one of the names of Jesus is Yehovah, our righteousness. That's my take on this. Okay. Now, since we've been talking about, the Passover and the Exodus, God, taking us out of the land of Egypt and bringing us into the promised land, we come to Jeremiah 23, verse 7. So behold, the days are coming, declares Yehovah, when they will no longer say, as surely as Yehovah lives, who brought up the Israelites up out of the land of Egypt. Instead, they will say, as surely as Yehovah lives, who brought and led the descendants of the house of Israel out of the land of the north and all the other lands to which he had banished them. Then they will dwell once more in their own land. And let's see here. I'm just skipping ahead here to see if okay. Yeah, I think that's pretty much, that's kind of the core of it. But Jeremiah 23, there's a second greater exodus, because it says, no longer will they say, no longer will they declare, as surely as Yehovah lives, who brought up the Israelites up out of the land of Egypt. Instead, they will say, as surely as Yehovah lives, who brought and led the descendants of the house of Israel up out of the land of the north and all the other lands to which he had banished them. And then they will dwell once more in their own land. So this is a super, and with, Yeshua as our king, Yehovah, our righteousness. So it's a beautiful passage. And you'll see this theme, there's this theme of God calling a person or a group of people out of the world and into the land of promise. And so you'll see, for example, Abraham, he calls Abraham, says, Abraham, come out of the world, Babylon or Chaldea, or Ur of the Chaldeans, and go to a place to which I will show you. So Abraham, he doesn't even know where he's supposed to go. He just says, I will show you where, and so there's the start of this relationship, this communication between God the Most High and Abraham, a regular, flesh and blood human. And so that's this theme of coming out of the world of, the world, flesh, wickedness, and into the land of promise, which is, supposed to be undefiled, a holy land for a holy people. It's like, like what Peter says, you are a holy people, a peculiar treasure to God, in the land. I can't remember exactly how it goes, but when the land is you see right now, the land of Israel, I mean, it's under stress. They got the war going on, and there's sin in the land. There's idolatry. I don't know. There was that that terrible attack on October 7th. I mean, there were people. This thing called the Nova Festival, and there was literally a statue of Buddha in this, and people were like, I don't know, bowing down to it or something. I mean, it's just like, dude, this is not okay. That's like, I think that's the first of the 10 commandments, is right there. So I'm not condoning, or approving of their being killed, but you need to understand is when you start participating in sin like that, you're opening up a door for the enemy to come in and attack. And that's exactly what happened. The enemy came and attacked them. So this is why, it's in your best interest to live a holy life. I mean, learn of God's ways and walk in them, just as, Yeshua walked in it, the Lamb without spot. And, be imitators of Christ, or be imitators of God. And then, so you have, the theme, God calls Abraham out of the world and into the land of promise. God calls the Israelites in, and this is the Exodus, so God calls, the Israelites in Egypt, enslaved in Egypt, which is kind of like the world, and all the horrible, all the false gods that they were worshiping, and they're doing terrible things to these Israelites. He calls them out of the world and into the land of promise. And there was a lot of, purifying that had to happen. You had to get all these other wicked people doing these terrible things, like, passing their children through the fire, which is, a pagan practice. You burn your child, your baby, you put your baby on this, in this fire, and in order to get a good harvest or something like that, or to get, gain favor from some false god. And, just dreadful stuff. So they had, all those had to get out of there so the land could be holy. And when Jesus comes, even the things that could cause someone to sin is going to be removed from the promised land. And we will be a holy people to Yehovah, holy unto the Lord, through Yeshua, our righteousness. Yehovah, Yeshua, our righteousness. And so in that same way, when Jesus returns, he's going to be like the second Moses, and he's going to call and gather all of us from the whole world, all who, trust in Jesus, and learn of the ways of his Father, which he taught and exemplified. And he will bring us back into the land of promise, and we will rule and reign with him for 1,000 years and then forevermore. And he will wipe away every tear from our eyes. So there's, what is that? Some Revelation 21. So Revelation 21, verse 1. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. That's Jesus. So there's a marriage going on here. And this is, so we're, it's kind of like that now, but not yet. But, we believers who trust in Jesus and walk as he walked, and not walk in this crazy disobedience that the lost sheep of the house of Israel were engaging in. There was idolatry and murder and adultery and all kinds of horrible things. We will walk with Jesus in obedience to God's word, to God's law. And we will be his special possession. And so anyway, so Revelation 21, verse 2, I saw the holy city, holy, like set apart, righteous, the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, behold, the dwelling place of God is with man, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people. God himself will be with them as their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the former things have passed away. And the one seated on the throne, said, behold, I make all things new. Then he said, write this down, for these words are faithful and true. And he told me, it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give freely from the spring of the water of life. So hunger and thirst for righteousness, because Jesus says in the Beatitude, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. So it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give freely from the spring of the water of life. Verse 7, the one who overcomes will inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. And Hosea chapter 1 and chapter 2 is connected to this. So if you ever wanted to look into that, Hosea chapter 1 and chapter 2 is just a beautiful prophecy here. Then it says in verse 8, but to the cowardly and the unbelieving and the abominable, and it's like so the question is how does one be abominable? That's a really good study to look in Genesis to Revelation. What is it to be abominable, or what is abominable? So Revelation 21, verse 8, but to the cowardly and unbelieving and abominable and murderers and sexually immoral and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars, their place will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur. This is the second death. And one thing that I'm pretty sure the phrase sexually immoral refers to joining yourself to a god, or joining yourself to a false god, or an idol. Typically what happens, if you want to join yourself to Aphrodite or something, you would have sex with a temple priestess, or if you're a woman, you would have sex with a male prostitute, who is kind of like the earthly representative of that god or goddess. And that's how you would join yourself. The two become one flesh. This is how you join yourself to that other god. And that's what this sexual immorality, I believe, is referring to. And that's, so you have, like physical adultery, we all know what that is. And then there's spiritual adultery, which God just hates. He hates spiritual adultery. And so that's what, he says in the first, the 10 Commandments, is, do not bow down to, other gods, do not make an idol and all that stuff. So he's also, his name is jealous. I'm a jealous God. His name is jealous. I can't remember where there is, but somewhere. God, his name is jealous. I can't remember where there is, but somewhere in the Older Testament. And so you don't want to make God jealous. And so anyway, so So to the cowardly, the unbelieving, the abominables, murderers, sexually immoral, which is spiritual adultery, I think, and then sorcerers and idolaters and all liars, their place will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur. So this is the second death. So, don't do that. You will not inherit. Paul says so much there. The unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom, or the wicked will not inherit the kingdom. And Jesus says, no one can see the kingdom unless he has been born again or begotten from above. John 3, verse 3, and John 3, verse 31 is an interesting pair of verses to deeply study. Deeply study John 3:3 and John 3:31 to really understand what it actually means to be born again or begotten from above. So that's all connected to this. Now, this is kind of an interesting aside. I always think this is so cool. Is further down in Revelation 21, verse 15, starting with verse 15, he's talking about that the new Jerusalem coming down out of heaven from God. And the angel who spoke with me had a golden measuring rod to measure the city, the New Jerusalem, and its gates and walls. The city lies foursquare, it's a square, with its width the same as its height. Or so the width is the same as its length. And he measured the city with the rod, and all its dimensions were equal, 12,000 stadia in length and width and height. So this thing is 12,000 stadia by 12,000 stadia by 12,000 stadia by 12,000 stadia cube. And I can't remember what exactly, but I mean it's like literally thousands of miles, or at least more than 1,000 miles each way. So the vast majority of the New Jerusalem will literally be in outer space. It's so like 1,000 miles tall. I mean, you're well past the Kármán line. Well past the Kármán line. So I think it's just such a fascinating thing. It's just going to be an incredible thing to witness. So that's kind of all I've got right now to come into mind. So may the Lord Yeshua bless you and keep you. May you make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord Yeshua lift up his countenance and give you shalom. So may the Lord, Yeshua HaMashiach, lift up his countenance to you from the cross and give you shalom. Because that's what he did for us. He did all that to give us shalom and to be with him and with the Father forever and ever. Amen. Yahweh bless you.